I'm happy to announce that last year, when I planted the prickly pear cactus on an acre of dirt bathtubs, I completely messed up. I say that without any pride or any shame. I learned something, and that's a core promise of this channel. I promise to show you me learning how to make a desert forest in the most isolated spot in the state of Texas, warts and all. Thiago Barbosa from Syntropic Solutions stepped in as my mentor. He's a prominent figure in the Syntropic agroforestry movement, which is what made me pay attention to him. Back in September of 2023, his mentorship over me was in its first month. I understood some things without understanding them. I learned the information to the point where I could say the right things, but not so well that I could do the right things. And after poor Thiago watched my first cactus planting video and cringing his way through it, he knew there was only one way to make sure that I succeeded. He personally flew in to oversee my early critical efforts to build the desert forest and to help me fix this dirt bathtub that we're working on today. This is what I'm so excited about with the dirt bathtubs, because aside from throwing cactus in here, which is clearly not working, the thing that is working is the water accumulation. That bush is a symbol of success. I didn't grow any native seeds in here, and yet I have that bush, which is fairly substantial, and this little one growing. That little creosote, that wasn't there before, and it's bright green. This is working, but it's gonna take another 3, maybe 4 years before it significantly accumulates vegetation on its own. I wanna speed that up. And to get started, what you can see around me is a ring that we're gonna plant intentionally full of cacti and oocotillo, and we're gonna put a bunch of mulch in here. Basically, I want to accelerate this process. Instead of just digging more dirt bathtubs, I want to maximize my odds of success. And to make that happen, I have Thiago Barbosa here with me so that we can capitalize on all these dirt bathtubs that I've already paid to do. Let's get started.
So what we're trying to do here is not only accumulate water, because water can accumulate here for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, the bathtubs will hold water for definitely less than an hour.
Okay.
It's possible that they might refill several times if it's raining quite a bit, but yeah, like the water is not going to sit on the surface. It's going right in the dirt.
Okay, the only way to hold water is to have a sponge made of organic matter that will hold the water for a couple of days, maybe even months. Also, we are not only relying on bringing some organic matter to here, but look, we got bathtubs everywhere. We're talking about hundreds of acres to be reforested. We need to start a factory of biomass. And the factory of biomass will be something that is already growing here, that will grow vigorous even in the harsh conditions, like cactus, oocotillo, creosote, but also the grass that you have growing here too. So we're gonna do a very dense planting here, maybe even do another ring on the outside, maximizing or optimizing the chances for this cactus, 100% of them, if it's possible, to sprout. So we have that root activity, and then with that root activity, we're gonna have some microbiology in the soil, and that's the beginning of a factory.
Yeah.
But naturally, that will take tens, if not hundreds of years. We want to have that going here in a couple of years. You've seen the work that I've done in the outback of Australia. That's a semi-arid, very similar rainfall.
It's the exact same. It's 14 inches in both places.
And when I walked through this place here, my core memory of Lightning Ridge kicked off and said, that's exactly like Lightning Ridge, you know?
Australia is, sadly, the poster child of ecological disaster. And that's whether it's plagues of frogs or the black summer of bushfires that burned large swaths of the country to ash. A large part of the Australian continent is hurting. Lightning Ridge, which Thiago is alluding to in this clip, is something of a disaster hotspot. It suffered from those out-of-control bushfires. It's got the same overgrazing problem that plagues the Dust Ups Ranch. And then there's the opal mining. Most of the opal mining in Lightning Ridge uses open-cut strip mines. And before I go on, I want to be very clear, I'm not advocating against strip mining. The lithium in my off-grid batteries almost certainly came out of a strip mine. I think it would be hypocritical to say mining is bad. What I am against is leaving a gigantic mess and a hole in the earth. There are several ways to clean up messes from mining. I've messaged Enrique Guerrero from the regenerative grazing movement, and he showed me one of his projects, which was a mine restoration in Chihuahua, Mexico. And he used ultra-high density grazing to turn a former strip mine into a lush grassland. Amazing transformation. Thiago and his team have done the same thing at Lightning Ridge, but instead of partnering with a mining company, they partnered with a local landowner, Rebel Black. I think it's totally fair to describe this footage as a blank slate. And now, 4 years later, this is Lightning Ridge. The property that they're working gets the same 14 inches or 350 millimeters of annual rainfall that I get, but the change is completely dramatic. One thing I'd really like to do is to visit Lightning Ridge myself and to make an episode out of it, but I also don't want to get distracted from my own desert forest efforts. If you think it would be worthwhile for me to go to Australia and make an episode out of Thiago and his team's success at Lightning Ridge, I would love to do that, but I don't want to do that unless the viewer feedback is positive. So let me know in the comments.
If we made it happen there with very little water, we can make it happen here too. Ring done, now we need to harvest cactus.
All right, let's do it.
Yesterday I was showing Brandon how I harvest the cactus. So they'll be ready to plant straight away.
Yeah.
You don't need to grab it with a tongue or... I'm learning my lessons with thorny plants.
Don't touch them.
Don't touch them. I believe that they throw thorns away, through you.
They do. They shoot them.
Yeah.
Like a projectile. So how much of this cactus do we want to leave?
I will try to leave the strong ones that's already rooted.
Right? And just take off all the ears?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, let me go get my shovel. Thank you to Bombas for sponsoring today's episode. It's June in the Chihuahuan Desert. It's the hottest month of the year, but I'm as comfortable as I can be because I am wearing merino wool. Merino wool is my absolute favorite fabric for these kind of extreme conditions because it keeps me cool in the summer. I'm sweating, but it's not absolutely profuse, and it's because the merino wool does a good job of wicking away the moisture, and it works the opposite in the winter. I can wear this and it's insulated and it keeps me warm. This particular shirt from Bombas is my favorite shirt to wear out here. I really appreciate the thought that goes into these products. The seams, the stitching is very tight, but it's super soft. And it's got these little creature comforts like this, where I can slip in my thumb. Helps prevent some sunburns because any exposed skin out here, it gets nuked in the June heat. You may not be building a forest in the desert, but if you think you might get a little warm this summer, check out the merino shirt from Bombas. Head over to bombas.com/dustups. Use the promotion code DUSTUPS20 to take 20% off of your first order.
Because of the wind, can you see that not even the cactus grow tall?
Yeah, it's very narrow. There's a species of cactus that I want to add called cow's tongue.
Yeah. You should be getting a factory of that thornless cactus as well.
Yeah, I don't want to bet too heavy on the thornless cactus. The cows out here will just eat the thorn. Like they'll eat these pads that we're digging right now.
If we are optimizing the process, we need to harvest the cactus and not leave it for weeks or months before we put them on the ground, because every day without being rooted, they're losing water, they're losing energy. The best scenario would be to harvest it, have it close as possible to the quantity that we need for the day or for the week, and then harvest it. So the water and the energy goes back into the ground, not into evaporation and whatever it is.
Right. The dirt bathtub that we're working on is on top of the hill, and although the vegetation it's fairly sparse, there is prickly pear growing nearby. And instead of taking cuttings from along the road or other places like I did back in September, obviously the logistics are much easier to walk 10 feet and cut some cactus and bring it right back to the dirt bathtub. I intentionally did not harvest the cactus from near the dirt bathtubs when I started because I wanted to maximize the biomass that was already there. I didn't want to take away from what I'm trying to build. But there's a strong argument for harvesting the cactus right by the dirt bathtub because number one, it's like pruning. When you prune a tree, you encourage it to grow, and cactus responds in the same way. And then the second is that I am trying to accumulate the biomass in these areas, so if I cut the plant and I use those cuttings to multiply the same plant, over time I should have exponentially more growth. All right, it looks like we have pretty close to enough. Do we want to get the tongs and do the shovel method where
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Okay.
And again, we want to have a least amount of exposure to the western sun.
Yeah, so we want to place them.
Oh,
Oops,
they
here you
got
go.
me.
We place them like that, and then we collapse the wall
Yeah,
from the top, and then I can hold it with the
yeah,
tongs to get the
beautiful.
orientation correct.
Yeah. We want to leave as less surface out as possible so it doesn't dry out.
The shuffle method is one of those things that is just so obvious when you look at it, but it's not obvious when you're figuring out how to plant cactus in sand and gravel. Leaving the entire pad exposed on the ground is exactly what caused my failure rate above 90%. The problem with this idea of pressing the pad into the ground is that it leaves so much of the surface area exposed to the sun. Now I'm relying on Thiago's advice and expertise to adapt so that I can be more effective with the resources that I have, which is prickly pear cactus.
What happens with this cactus here, because it's very windy, we're on the top of the hill, but everywhere actually where I see it, the cactus grow a little bit tall and the wind blows it. When it falls, it roots. We see a big branch of cactus shooting everywhere, yeah? But this took many, many years for this process. We're trying to do the same thing and accelerate this process instead of waiting many, many years for a cactus to grow, the wind blows, it falls, and then a new branch shoots. When this line of cactus here start growing, we can chop it and organize it instead of just chopping and dropping.
Right.
We're gonna try to plant the oocotillo here too.
Yeah, I think maybe just like on the inside.
Or on the inside, on the outside, doesn't
Well,
matter.
whatever.
Yeah.
But
These are the seeds of this.
that's purple crickle mat.
So beautiful. You see a lot of those seeds, the grass kind of nesting it, creating a better environment for it to grow. So we need to mimic it. Try
Yes.
to find a place to hold all these seeds, and that hopefully this will hold the seeds.
If you're new here, the reason that we're so stuck on establishing cactus, and especially prickly pear, is that it's one of the few plants that's really excited to be growing on the ranch. You can walk anywhere on my 320 acres and there's prickly pear on almost every single part of it. By desert standards, prickly pear puts on a dramatic amount of biomass that can be used as mulch and shade. And it also functions as a living cistern. If I do a good job mulching the ground with food for fungi and other soil microbes, I can develop a soil microbial network that allows for an exchange of water and nutrients among plants, with the prickly pear cactus being at the center of it. It's 80 to 90% water. So if we build the soil microbes and we establish the cactus, we're going to create the conditions that allow other types of plants to thrive and eventually work the succession cycle until we get to a forest. Thiago has taught me how to pay attention to the way that the existing native plants are growing. It's rare to walk around and just find one plant growing all by itself with no friends. This agave likely established itself in the shade of this oocotillo. These tufts of Sidot's grama grass got their start hiding in the agave, and here you can see this prickly pear has nurtured a young creosote bush growing in its shade. The whole point of establishing a prickly pear cactus is to establish a microclimate where we have a new source of mulch that's creating shade to nurture young plants that can act as a living cistern to provide water and nutrients to the plants that are growing in its microclimate.
Who would say that we would need so much effort to plant cactus?
I know. It's been very much a learning process for me to realize that I was trying to orient the cactus, but I really thought if I just maximize the ground contact, it'll work. It did not work. It's a lot smarter to take the time.
We are running out, so I think we need more pads, eh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Back here, some soil.
This might be the last one. All right.
It's all fully planted. The cactus is fully planted. So imagine this growing, creating a barrier for things that wants to fly out and be held by will be a catcher of organic matter as well. So and then we have a catcher here, another one there, another one there. So whatever is flying from there, we'll have a catchment area for organic matter. Even if it's very little, every little bit counts here.
Absolutely.
So now we do the oocotillo. So we're trying to get these little cuttings here, try to stick that on the ground, make sure that they grow, and that's the only thing that we have in abundance here.
Yeah, oocotillo, creosote.
We should definitely be planting a lot of that. People will ask, but what if they grow to this size again and they will not compete with the other one next to it? Yeah, that's when we chop and organize the organic matter. It's not just chop and dropping. We chop and organize and use that as an organic matter source. So we want to use that amount, and then we do another 2 foot
Right.
up to here. And then this last bit I don't want to use.
Okay, that's our mulch.
Yeah. Again, it's not just chop and drop. We really need to break it in small pieces if we can.
Wow, just like that we have...
I think what we can do is, instead of planting very next to each other, we try to double it. 2 sticks in one hole.
Okay.
And then we do another 1 foot away. 50. Need 62
Okay.
cuttings.
Okay. Pruning is always opinionated. Sometimes you can prune shrubs to grow like trees. In this case, I want the oocotillo to grow in its natural vase-like shape. I prune this really aggressively like I do my fruit trees at home in Fort Worth. Later, I learned that I may have been too aggressive when I was reading more about oocotillo fences. One video I came across recommended that I only harvest 30 or 40% of the canes from the mother plant. In this case, it looks like I took more like 80%. One thing I do know is that I reserved about 1/3 of those canes to mulch the mother plant directly. Those little bits of organic matter, they keep the sun away, and really important, they keep the wind away. It's going to help regulate the temperature from the sun, and it's going to keep the wind from evaporating whatever moisture happens to gather in the soil. It keeps it there for just that much longer. All right, let me bring you the good stuff.
Oh, you got some of the good stuff.
I got the good stuff. I knew this thing was cracking, but here's my shovel. It's done.
This one here, because there is no soil. There's a lot more life than it was before.
Absolutely.
100 plus oocotillo and more than 80 cactus. Now would be good to plant the grass, maybe on top here. Maybe
Okay.
try that in the morning when it's not that hot.
What you just watched was a total of 2 hours, or with 2 people, 4 man hours of labor to do a really thorough job planting a single dirt bathtub. Over time, my emphasis is going to be on the terraces rather than the dirt bathtubs, and that's just because of access. They're so much easier to walk on. I can drive on them. I can be a lot more efficient bringing materials to them, but I've already dug 2.4 acres of dirt bathtubs. I don't want to make them the centerpiece of my efforts because it's so difficult to access. There's vegetation growing in the middle of them. If you're not paying attention, you might break an ankle. However, because they're already there, I already spent the time and the money digging them in the first place, and I really do need a mulch factory. We're going to set aside a few hours every week to work on one dirt bathtub to get it really nice and going. That's going to be a long process, but over time, we need that mulch badly. The biggest limitation to growing anything out here right now is mulch and water. And of course, we're thinking about water. It's the most important thing, but I've already done what I can in this section with the dirt bathtubs to collect every bit of water that's falling from the sky. Last year, these dirt bathtubs proved their effectiveness. I've seen water sheeting across the landscape, filling up in the dirt bathtubs, soaking into the ground, and you saw at the beginning of this video that vegetation's already colonized this area where water's concentrating. The terraces do the same thing. They're cut into the hillside where you have the area above it catching all the water, and then it flows into the terrace. The next step after earthworks is mulch. The reason mulch is so important is that whatever water shows up, the mulch helps it stick around near where roots expect to find it for much longer than would happen if it just drains down into the sand. Moisture that sticks around longer leads to more biomass, which leads to more mulch, which leads to more water, which leads to more biomass. Everything about the Syntropic agroforestry method is to encourage a cycle of accumulation. Every success, every win needs to reinforce and build upon the prior wins. It actually reminds me of one of the best business books in existence, which is Good to Great by Jim Collins. One of the fundamental comments that's shared across all high-performance companies is the idea of the flywheel, that everything the company does reinforces what it's good at, which helps it get a little bit better at acquiring customers and operating efficiencies. And over time, that success just builds on itself and it builds on itself and it builds on itself until you have a flywheel that takes on a momentum entirely of its own. This is my path to the desert forest, and I am very grateful to Thiago and Syntropic Solutions for showing me the way. There's also really good news on the terrace that I'd like to share with you, but that happens over the email list. Head up over to dustupsranch.com for a wonderful little summer surprise. That's where I send everything that's happening on the ranch in near real time. It's where I get feedback from my audience. It's how I communicate most with my followers and my fans. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.